Get out.
Sorry, man.
Okay.
Get out!
Yo!
Yeah!
Yo, chill, man.
Get out!
Chill!
Get out! Chill, man! Chill!
Jordan Peele's iconic film Get Out is without a doubt one of the most effective examples of social horror and comedy in recent years. This combination saw Peele pick up an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay in his 2017 directional debut. In the film, Peele subverts the genre of horror, which had been dominated by white directors like Alfred Hitchcock, John Carpenter, and Tobe Hooper, who also used predominantly white protagonists in their films. Get Out, however, is a narrative showcasing the emotional and psychological effects of racism through a black protagonist, giving the audience a sense of what it is like to experience racism on a daily basis. The story features Chris Washington, played by Daniel Kaluuya, who is a young African-American photographer, as he accompanies Rose Armitage, played by Alison Williams, his girlfriend, for a tense weekend at her parents' estate. The film symbolises the systematic and institutionalised aspects to racism in modern society, specifically in America, and the idea of post-racial America. For a bit of context, this refers to the idea that America was no longer a racist country after electing Barack Obama as president. Peele specifically draws to this in his creation of the sunken place, a metaphor for the suppressing of black voices, an institutionalised form of slavery. The audience is originally introduced to this concept in the beginning of Act 2, roughly 32 minutes in, as Missy, played by Catherine Keener, who is Rose's mother, initially hypnotises Chris, catalysing a serious turning point in the film. The scene begins with a flashback to the night Chris's mum passed. Interestingly, the screen young Chris watches as he waits for his mum to come home shares a resemblance to that of the view from the sunken place. This connects to the feeling that Chris felt that night and compares it to that of the sunken place, a sense of hopelessness or helplessness. It's almost as if this connection is reinforced as Chris states how that if he had called anyone,
Dad, make it real.
similar to post-racial America, which possesses this new subtle racism under the surface, if any attention was brought to it by the government or protesters, it would make racism in America real again. Peele then follows with a number of close-up shots on Chris's expression, illustrating the deep emotional and psychological state of him in contrast to Missy's hollow expression and tone. Additionally, the close-up shot is also utilised twice by cinematographer Toby Oliver on both Missy's teacup and Chris's scratching at the chair, hinting at the significance these minor actions have on the narrative in both hypnotising Chris and his eventual escape from the Armitage estate. Having now discussed how Peele sets the scene and builds tension in the scene, let's delve into the significance and symbolism behind the sunken place. For starters, the action of Chris falling back into the sunken place is almost as if he is being pushed down, symbolic of the suppression of him, or on a larger scale, black voices. Peele adds to this representation in the drowning-like diegetic sound, which is heard throughout the sunken place. And the fact you can see Chris screaming as he descends into the darkness, yet a word cannot be heard. Peele powerfully constructs its meaning to serve as a metaphor for the suppression of black voices, felt in this systemic form of racism. Finally, to cap off the scene, Missy leans into the camera, breaking the fourth wall, and says directly to the audience,
Now you're in the sunken place.
It is in this moment Peele directly puts the audience in Chris's shoes, giving them a taste of what this place of vulnerability and suppression feels like. The party scene serves as a point in the narrative where Peele really ramps up the tension. Found in Act 2 at around the 45-minute mark, I find it is this scene in particular where Peele really breaks down the idea of subtle racism present in post-racial America. The increasing microaggressions towards Chris as he meets Rose's family friends makes it clear that they do not see him as one of them. They perceive him as a black person, only useful for his physical attributes. Notably in this scene, Peele uses the symbolic code of colour, with costume designer Nadine Haydes dressing the Armitages with hints of red and crisp blue, contrasting the difference between him and them. Initially, by some, this could be perceived as symbolism for Republicans versus Democrats. However, the positioning of Chris and Rose next to one another depicts a suspicious resemblance of the American flag, indicating to the audience of this scene representing the whole of America. It should also be noted that Rod, played by Lil Rel Howery, Chris's best friend in the film, who is consistently, over the course of the narrative, trying to help Chris, wears blue too, creating a direct link between blue and red as good and evil. Additionally, in this scene, both Georgina, played by Betty Gabrielle, and Logan, played by Lakeith Stanfield, who are both previous black individuals who have had their bodies taken over by white people, wear some sort of grey, symbolic of their mixture of white and black. Peele in this scene also portrays the perspective of Chris, as shots through his camera lens are utilised to view the different people at the party. Once again, Peele putting the audience in Chris's shoes, encouraging them to look at the situation through his point of view and feeling the feelings he feels. The Give Me the Keys sequence serves as the biggest plot twist in the movie, as the audience witnesses Rose's betrayal of Chris and the loss of all hope. Occurring in the very end of Act 2 at around 1 hour and 25 minutes, I feel as though this scene specifically is used by Peele to emphasise the isolation which can be felt from being discriminated against, along with its psychological and emotional effect. The scene utilises low-key lighting, which is only really used by Peele in the induction of Andre Hayworth at the opening of the film, who we later learn to be Logan, and when Chris goes out to smoke before his encounter with Missy, preempting the audience to the evil about to unfold. This in itself is interesting, as horror films usually feature the majority of low-key lighting scenes. However, Peele does this to further highlight his subversion of horror to social horror and bring into the audience attention a sense of normality associated with subtle racism through high-key or natural lighting, such as in the party scene. Additionally, Rose is framed in chiaroscuro lighting in this sequence, Peele perhaps hinting at a transformation from the light to the dark side. Furthermore, the use of a greeny tinge to some of the shots from the sequence add a sticky atmosphere, helping build the uncomfortable situation Chris has found himself in. Once again in this scene too, Peele utilises a number of close-up shots on both the teacup and the actors' faces to highlight the significance of tea and capture as much emotion as possible in his actors. This can be seen in Chris's frantic screaming at Rose for the keys and the sudden change in her expression as her true identity is revealed. Peele also reinforces the idea of systematic suppression as Chris falls back into the sunken place where his screams cannot be heard by the Armitages and the audience. So there you have it, Jordan Peele's critically acclaimed directional debut, Get Out. It is a great blend of social commentary and horror. The symbolism, codes and conventions used by Peele evidently picked carefully to convey meaning, creating a representation of the daily experience of racism. The 2017 film capturing the uncomfortable feeling so commonly felt in consumption of horror, emphasising the uncomfortable knowledge and experience of racism in today's society.